Did you know that a small Caribbean island has been a battlefield between the world's great powers for centuries? Did you know that even today this island is not a fully independent country, but its identity resonates throughout the world? This is Puerto Rico, the island of the brave. The island of the brave. The land of sacrifice. The treasure of culture. Viewers, in today's video, we will see the complete history of Puerto Rico step by step. From ancient tribes to the Spanish occupation, then the American era, and today's political reality. And I will also ask you a question, because history is not just for listening, but also for thinking. So viewers, stay with us until the end, because at the end, there will be an aspect that may surprise you. Weavers. Now we turn the wheel of time back, far back. In a time when Spanish ships were not even visible on the horizon, a lush island was breathing in the blue waters of the Caribbean. Its name was Boriquen. Weavers, remember this word, Boriquen, because that was the original name. That was its identity. This was not an empty land. This was a whole world, a civilization. And the Taíno people were the heirs of this world. Weavers, just imagine. No European flags, no cannons, no armies running for gold. Just the waves of the ocean, dense forests, and settlements that they called yucayeques. Each settlement had a chief, cacique. But weavers understood one important thing here. This rule was not one of coercion. This was not a system of power, spirituality. The Taíno people did not consider the earth to be just land. They called it mother. They saw spirit in trees, strength in rivers, blessings in mountains. Their gods were called zemis. They were placed in houses in the form of wood or stone. Prayer before every harvest, thanksgiving after every hunt. Think, weavers. What would a society that gave thanks before taking be like? Now weavers talk about their daily lives. The Taíno people were experts in fishing. They traveled the seas in wooden boats, what we today call canoe. Yes, weavers, the word canoe came from their language. They threw nets, used spears, and did not fight with the sea. They lived in harmony. Now look at their agriculture, weavers. They created a special system, the canuco system, raising crops by creating mounds of soil so that water is not wasted. What a simple yet brilliant idea. They grew yucca, cassava, which they used to make bread. Corn, sweet potatoes, peanuts, fruits, all of these were part of their diet. Weavers. This was a time when agriculture was not yet so organized in many parts of Europe. So the question is, who was the real civilized person? Weavers now talk about culture. Music and dance were the heart of their lives. There was a ritual, areto. It included songs, dances, history, everything. This was their book. This was their university. This was their archive. Weavers. Have you ever thought, if a civilization is in complete harmony with nature, then did it need to change? Or maybe we just looked at history from the wrong angle? Now, weavers see another important aspect. The place of women in Taíno society was important. Land ownership was often passed down through the maternal line. That is, the system was not completely male-dominated. It was a balanced society, a peaceful society. But weavers, behind every peace lurks a danger. They had no idea that there was a world beyond the horizon that could kill for gold, that could enslave for land. They had no steel weapons, no gunpowder, nor the diseases that Europeans were immune to. Weavers, stop and think. What if Columbus had not arrived here in 1493? What if Boriquen had continued to develop at its own pace? Would it be a fully independent indigenous state today? Would the Taíno language still be dominant today? This question is not just a fantasy. It is a lost path in history. When Columbus arrived, he saw this paradise with the eyes of wealth. He asked for gold. He saw land and claimed it for the Spanish crown. Weavers, here begins a tragedy. The Taíno people considered him a guest. He gave gifts. He showed the way. He fed him. But that guest became the permanent owner. In a few decades, everything changed. Forced labor, mining, diseases like smallpox. The population of millions turned into thousands. This was not just a political occupation, it was a cultural tragedy.
But vivers.
Is it all over? No. Even today, hamaca. Even today, barbecue. Even today, hurricane. These words are from the Taíno language. Yuca is still eaten today. The local rhythm in the music is still present today. That is, Boriquen has not disappeared. He changed himself. And weavers, perhaps this is true heroism. Heroism is not just about the sword. Heroism is about keeping a piece of your identity alive, even centuries later. So weavers, is history only the story of the victors? Or should we also listen to these silent voices? This is just the beginning. The real story of Boriquen will continue to unfold. Stay tuned to Caribbean People Info, because we don't just tell history, we uncover history. Weavers, let's move forward.
Weavers, now let's talk about the moment that changed Boriquen's destiny. The year was 1493. The sea was calm, but the ships that appeared on the horizon were bringing with them a storm. Christopher Columbus was on his second voyage. This time, he wasn't just here to explore, he was here to claim lands, resources, and people. Weavers, just imagine the scene. On one side, the people who had lived here for centuries. On the other, the sailors who were landing on the shores carrying the flag of the Spanish crown. Columbus named the island San Juan Bautista. The name had religious overtones, as if he were making the land a spiritual gift. But weavers, after a while, the name changed. The port became important, trade increased, and the name became Puerto Rico, meaning rich port, wealthy port. Weavers, stop here for a moment. A name change is not just a change of words, it is a change of thought. Boriquen, the identity of a culture. Puerto Rico, an economic center, a symbol of wealth. From here, the story changed. The weavers now talk about gold. The Spanish began to search for gold on the island. They had heard that there were precious metals here. And when power and greed go together, the outcome is often bitter. The native Taíno people were put to forced labor, working in the mines, sifting for gold in the rivers, clearing the land. All this was done by people who were previously free. Just think, weavers. Yesterday, those who owned their land. Today, that same land has become their prison. This system, later called the encomienda system, was actually a form of slavery. The Spanish colonizers said they were Christianizing the natives. But in reality, they were being exploited. Their strength was being squeezed out. And then came the diseases. Smallpox, measles, influenza, these diseases came from Europe, but the Taíno bodies were unfamiliar with them. They had no immunity. In just a few decades, the population went from millions to thousands. This was not a battlefield. This was a silent death. An entire society was slowly disappearing. Think for yourself, weavers. Was this progress, or was destruction being called civilization? Columbus may have thought he was discovering a new world, but the truth is, he was destroying an existing one. This is a chapter in history that teaches us that might does not always bring justice. It is easy to wave a flag, but it is difficult to understand the spirit of the land. Weavers now sees another side. Some Taíno chiefs resisted. They tried to rebel, but their bows and arrows were weakened by steel weapons and guns. But remember, the resistance is not over. The spirit is not over. That is why indigenous heritage is still alive in Puerto Rico today. Weavers, here I ask you a question. If you were there at that time, what would you have done? Silence or resist? This is not just a question of history, it is a question of humanity. At Caribbean People Info, we don't just tell history as events. We also bring out the emotions, pain, and truth behind it. Weavers, if you want us to take the next step in looking at how Spain held the island for 400 years, how forts were built, how slaves were brought from Africa, and how a new mixed identity was born, then stay with us until the end. And yes, if you really want to hear such in-depth history that touches the heart, then subscribe to this channel right now. Not just to watch, subscribe to understand. Join Caribbean People Info, because viewers, the story is still to come. Now let's move on. The Spanish Empire's fortress, weavers. Now let's talk about a time when Puerto Rico wasn't just an island, it was a fortress. A fortress that stood in the middle of the ocean and over which the Spanish flag flew for 400 years. Yes, weavers, from the 16th century until 1898, almost 400 years, Puerto Rico was part of the Spanish Empire. 4 centuries. Just think, how many generations have come and gone? How many stories have changed? But the symbol of power has remained the same, weavers. The question is, if this island weren't so important, would Spain have held it for 400 years? Now just think of the map. The Caribbean Sea, full of the wealth of the New World. Gold and silver from Mexico and South America are heading to Europe. And those ships are threatened by enemy powers on the way: England, France, the Netherlands. So, weavers, Spain needed a strong military base, and that base was built: San Juan. San Juan was not just a city, it was a military wall. Here was built El Morro, a magnificent fort that stands on the seashore. Then came San Cristobal, another defensive masterpiece. Weavers, even today when you stand on the walls of El Morro, you can hear the breath of history along with the sea breeze. These forts are not just stones. They were a declaration of power. This was the message: this land is ours. Now imagine a scene. Enemy ships are visible in the sea. The fort's cannons are ready. Soldiers are standing on the walls. Puerto Rico was not just a colony, it was Spain's defensive shield. Weavers, did you know that many times British and Dutch forces invaded this island? But they often failed, because San Juan was truly an iron gate. But weavers, with power always comes a price. The Spanish Empire planted sugarcane plantations here. Sugarcane cultivation flourished, and for that, labor was needed. Now another painful chapter in history opens here. Slaves were brought from Africa. They were chained and put on ships. They were brought across the ocean to the Caribbean. Imagine weavers, away from their homes, their lands, their language, in a new world simply because someone else is more powerful. These slaves were not just laborers. They were human beings. They had dreams. They had songs. And this is the moment where Puerto Rico's identity changes even more. Taíno plus Spanish plus African. The fusion of three worlds. Weavers, if you listen to the music of Puerto Rico today, if you taste the food there, if you hear the accent of the language there, you will clearly see the African influence. The beat of the drums, the energy of the dance, songs that live in the soul, that is, slavery imprisoned bodies, but could not stop culture. Now weavers, a question for you. Do you think that culture can be chained? During the Spanish era, the Catholic Church also strengthened. Churches were built, religion was spread, but at the same time, indigenous and African traditions also lived in the background. It was a silent resistance. A lot has changed in 400 years. The economy changed, generations changed, indigenous words were added to the language. But one thing remained constant. This island was part of a power game. Weavers, have you ever wondered what it would be like to live under another empire for 400 years? Your land is yours, but someone else's decisions. And yet, the spirit of Puerto Rico has not been completely broken. That's why even today, people don't just call themselves Puerto Rican, but Boricua, a word derived from Borican. The word is a declaration that the true identity is still alive. Viewers, if you think history is confined to the history books, it's not. It's still breathing today. The walls of El Morro still stand. San Cristobal still looks out to sea, and they are bearing witness that this island was never just a silent spectator. It has always stood in the midst of history. Now I ask you, viewers, can 400 years of rule erase a nation's identity, or does that identity become stronger? Be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments. I want to read your thoughts. And if you want us to take a look at the next step, how the Spanish flag was lowered and the American flag raised in 1898, how a new power stepped in. So viewers, stay tuned. Subscribe to Caribbean People Info. Don't just subscribe. Be a part of this mission. We don't skimp on the surface here. We go deep. We show aspects that you don't find in regular videos. If you really want to understand the real history of the Caribbean, subscribe now. Comment. Tell us which country's history you want to see next. Because viewers, the story isn't over yet. Puerto Rico's destiny is about to take another turn. Let's move on.
Weavers. Now let's talk about the turning point where a 400-year-old chapter closed and a new power knocked on the door. The year was 1898. The world was changing. Empires were clashing. And then came the Spanish-American War. This war was not long, but its effects were profound. The United States defeated Spain, and weavers. In an instant, the balance of power changed. Think about it, viewers. One day you are part of the Spanish Empire, and the next day you are under the control of the American government. The flag changed. The influence of the language began to change. The laws began to change. But the land remained the same. The people remained the same. Weavers, understand one important thing here. The United States did not see Puerto Rico as just land. It was a strategic location, a gateway to expanding influence in the Caribbean. It was a key point near the Panama Canal. That is, history was playing the same game again. The powers were changing, but the island was still at the center. Now, weavers talk about the Foraker Act of 1900. This law came, and under it, Puerto Rico was made an unincorporated territory. That is, it was part of the United States, but not a full part. A civilian government was established here, but the governor was appointed by the United States. Viewers, stop and think. Was this autonomy? or a new form of control. Then came 1917, Jones Act. Under this law, the people of Puerto Rico were granted American citizenship. They were now legally U.S. citizens. Weavers. This sounds like a big deal. Citizenship, a powerful word. But with it comes the question, if citizenship was granted, why not complete independence? This is the question that lives on to this day. Weavers. Citizenship meant that Puerto Ricans could hold American passports. They could travel to the United States, work, but they couldn't vote in U.S. presidential elections. Their representative in Congress couldn't vote. So you're a citizen, but you don't have full political power. What kind of relationship is this? Half in, half out. Viewers, something else happened in 1917. The United States entered World War I, and thousands of Puerto Rican soldiers were drafted into the U.S. Army. Just think, Weavers. You got citizenship, and immediately you were sent to war. Was it a coincidence? Or a strategy? This is a question that historians still ask today. Now Weaver sees another aspect. The education system changed during the American era. The English language was promoted. The economy was integrated with the United States. The sugar industry grew. American companies arrived. Land ownership changed. But at the same time, the question of identity also deepened. Are we Spanish? Are we American? Or are we just Puerto Rican? Weavers. This is the internal conflict that continues to affect the politics of this island. There were several referendums in the 20th century. The people were asked, do you want to become the 51st state of the United States? Do you want complete independence? Or do you want to maintain the current status quo? The results were sometimes clear, sometimes controversial. The island is still a U.S. territory today. Viewers, I ask you, if you were granted citizenship but not full voting rights, would you be satisfied? This is not just a question of Puerto Rico. It is a question of power and representation. Weavers. See the human aspect here too. Many Puerto Rican families moved to the United States. Communities were formed in New York, Florida, Chicago, but the island remained at heart. A dual identity, a dual connection, and sometimes a double contradiction. At Caribbean People Info, we look at this question openly because history is not just history. It is connected to today's politics, today's identity, and today's reality. So viewers, what do you think? Should Puerto Rico gain full independence? Or is it better to become a state of the United States? Or is the current system just fine? Be sure to write your opinion in the comments. I want you to be part of this discussion. And if you want us to see the next phase, stay tuned. Subscribe to Caribbean People Info. Like the video. The story of Puerto Rico is entering its most exciting phase. Now let's move on.
We have now reached a point where history is no longer just the past, it becomes present politics. This is the chapter where the question is not of land, but of identity. This is the turning point where people ask themselves, who are we really? As the 20th century began, a new thought arose in Puerto Rico. Some people said, we want complete independence. Some said, no, we should become the 51st state of the United States. And some said, it is better to remain as we are, a U.S. territory. Weavers, just feel this division. This was not just political disagreement. This was a debate within homes. This was a battle of ideas within families. Now let's talk about the independence movement. In the 1930s and 1940s, nationalist movements gained strength. Leaders like Pedro Albizu Campos emerged, who openly demanded independence. They said, we want full sovereignty over our land. But Weavers, the question of independence is not easy when there is a superpower in front of us. There were many demonstrations. There were many arrests. There were some bloody incidents. This was a time when the word independence was both hope and danger. Now, Weavers, look at the other way around. Some people used to say that it would be better to become a state of the United States. Why? Because it would give full voting rights. It would give representation in Congress. It would bring economic stability. And then the third way, retaining Commonwealth status. That is, the current system where Puerto Rico is part of the United States, but not a full state. In 1952, Puerto Rico was given a new constitutional structure and called it a Commonwealth. Apparently, a model of self-government was given, but the ultimate power still remained with the U.S. Congress. Weavers, a fundamental question arises here. Today, Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory. People are American citizens. They have American passports. They can join the American military. But they can't vote in presidential elections. Their representative in Congress can't vote. What kind of relationship is that? There is citizenship, but not a full political voice. Viewers, just put yourself in their shoes. You pay taxes, you serve in the military, but you can't vote in the election of the head of the country. Is this full democracy or incomplete representation? Viewers, from 1967 until recent years, there have been several referendums. The people were asked, what do you want? Statehood, independence, or the current system? The results have never shown a clear majority. The island remains a political question mark today. There is also a human aspect. Many people want to stay connected to the United States because it provides economic support. The dollar is the currency. Federal funds come in. Education and health systems help. But on the other hand, some say our identity is being weakened. Our language, our autonomy, our political voice are limited. Viewers, do you think that economic gain is more important than freedom, or is identity the greatest thing? This is not just a political debate. It is a debate of emotions. It is a debate of the future. Even today, the younger generation is struggling with this question. Should we become fully American or fully independent, or continue to walk this middle path? At Caribbean People Info, we pose this question to you. We don't judge, we make you think. So, viewers, what do you think? If Puerto Rico gains full independence, will it be able to remain economically stable? If it becomes the 51st state of the United States, will its cultural identity be preserved? Be sure to tell us in the comments section. I really want to know your opinion. This video is not just information, it's a conversation. If you think such topics should be discussed openly, if you want us to describe the political reality of other regions of the Caribbean in the same depth, then subscribe to Caribbean People Info now. Don't just watch, subscribe to think. Like the video so that this discussion reaches more people. Because viewers, the story of Puerto Rico is at a decisive point, and the next step will bring the cultural power of this island to the world. You stay with us. Now let's move forward.
Let's talk about a very specific kind of power. The power that doesn't come from guns, not from laws, and certainly not from flags. It is a power that comes directly from the heartbeat. It is the pulse of a people that transcends borders and politics. Politically speaking, Puerto Rico is not completely independent. It exists in a unique and complex relationship. But weavers, when we talk about culture, culturally, it has conquered the world. It is a superpower that has touched every corner of the globe through its sheer vibrancy. This island shows us that power is not just a political concept. Power is also culture. Power is also music. Power is also identity itself. Weavers, just close your eyes for a moment and listen to that beat. The sound of the drums, the strum of a guitar, the rhythm of history. And then, listen to a voice that sings in Spanish, yet somehow, the whole world understands exactly what is being felt. Salsa, reggaeton, Latin pop. These are far more than just genres of music. They are the very soul of Puerto Rico. Salsa has its roots in Cuba and New York. But, weavers, it was Puerto Rico that gave it a global stage to shine upon. It is a beautiful blend that includes African rhythms, Spanish melodies, and that unmistakable Caribbean passion. Now, let's talk about reggaeton. In the 1990s, the younger generation in San Juan found a brand new way to express themselves. A new sound emerged from the streets, built on fast beats, street poetry, and a rebellious, independent tone. And then the world heard the name. Daddy Yankee. He wasn't just a singer, he was the start of a revolution. Then came Bad Bunny. Today, that name isn't just a singer, it's a global brand, a movement that the world follows. Bad Bunny proved that you can rule the global charts without ever singing a word in English. Isn't this cultural freedom? Weavers, a small island, but a superpower in music. A land without absolute political power has global power in culture. Think back to Ricky Martin. When he sang Livin' La Vida Loca in 1999, the whole world saw Latin music in a new way. That moment wasn't just a hit song, it was a massive cultural breakthrough. Music did what politics simply couldn't. It erased borders. Now, it's not just about the music. Puerto Rican food is also a vital part of its identity and its story. Arroz con gandules. The incredible aroma of rice and peas. The sweetness of sugarcane. The influence of African spices. Every dish tells a story of the people who came before. Weavers. Have you ever thought that food is a narrative in itself? Now let's talk about the festivals. Specifically, the San Sebastian Street Festival. Color, dance, and traditional clothing everywhere. People here don't just celebrate for fun. They do it to keep their identity alive. And the language? That is another pillar. Spanish is the main language, but English is also official. In everyday conversation, these two worlds meet constantly. Weavers. Do you think language is the greatest pillar of identity? If the language changes, does the person change too? The people often call themselves Boricua. This word comes from Boriquen. It means they have never forgotten their roots. 400 years of Spain. Then America. But through it all, it has remained Boriquen at heart. That is real power. Look at the New Yorkers in New York. They brought culture to the global stage through poetry, hip-hop, and art. The island is no longer limited by geography. It has become a global community. And that is what we show here at Caribbean People Info. Power is not just in political maps. Sometimes, power is found in the beat that moves the entire world. So viewers, what do you think? Can cultural influence overcome political weakness? Be sure to write in the comments. Subscribe to Caribbean People Info now. Not just for fun, subscribe for awareness. Like the video to help us reach more people. Viewers, the story isn't over. There are modern challenges and courage that made this the island of the brave. Stay with us.
Weavers. We are now entering a part of history that is not very old, but quite recent. This is the chapter that today's generation has experienced for itself. This is the time when Island of the Brave was no longer just a phrase. It became a reality. In recent years, Puerto Rico has faced a severe economic crisis. The government debt was growing. Billions of dollars in debt, the economy was sluggish, young people began to migrate to the United States in search of jobs. Weavers, just think. What does it mean when the young generation starts leaving the country? Hope is fading. The economy has been under constant pressure since 2006. Factories closed, employment opportunities decreased. The government borrowed, and the debt grew. In 2016, the U.S. Congress passed the PROMESA Act, which established a fiscal oversight board. That is, the island's fiscal autonomy was further limited. Weavers, are you feeling it? The political question was already there. Now the economic question is involved. And then 2017 came. Hurricane Maria. Weavers, it wasn't just a storm, it was a test, an earthquake that came from the ocean. In September 2017, this storm hit Puerto Rico. Winds were blowing at 155 miles per hour. Rain was pouring down. Trees were uprooted. Houses were destroyed. And the biggest damage, the power system was completely destroyed. The entire island was plunged into darkness. Not for days, not for weeks, but for months. Weavers, just imagine. No electricity, no clean water, no communication, emergency situations in hospitals. Elderly patients who needed oxygen machines in trouble. Schools closed, businesses closed, thousands of homes were destroyed, many families were displaced, thousands of lives were lost. It was the moment when the world saw Puerto Rico's vulnerability. But Weavers, in that moment, the world also saw its strength. That's what Island of the Brave really meant. People didn't wait for someone else to come and fix everything. Community centers opened, neighbors fed each other, young people cleared away debris, volunteers repaired roofs. Weavers, when the state system is weakened, the real strength is found in the community. Mothers stood in line for their children. Elders were patient. Young people showed courage. This was the moment when politics took a back seat and humanity took a back seat. Viewers, I ask you, Is a nation truly known in its prosperous times or in its times of trial? A new debate also began after Hurricane Maria. Was federal aid enough? Was the response slow? Would things have been different if it had been a full-fledged state? These questions still exist today. But one fact is clear: Puerto Rico did not give up. Gradually, power was restored, homes were rebuilt, the economy began to breathe, and with it, a new generation emerged that was more aware. Who knew we had to make our voices heard? Whether it was political, economic, or cultural. Weavers, this island has been tested time and time again. The Spanish occupation, the American political question, economic crises, natural disasters. But every time, it has stood up. That's why it's called the Island of the Brave. Bravery is not just about winning battles. Bravery is about having hope even in the dark. Bravery is when there is no electricity, but the spirit is bright. So, viewers, what do you think? Is Puerto Rico's future bright? Be sure to share your thoughts in the comments. If you think there should be more stories like this, subscribe to Caribbean People Info. Viewers, the story is not over. This island is still writing its own new history.
What is true bravery? So, viewers, Puerto Rico is not just an island. It is a story of resistance, of culture, of identity. It teaches us that strength is not just military, freedom is not just political, and bravery is not just in war, but in keeping your identity alive. Now I ask you one last question. What do you think the Island of the Brave really means? Be sure to share your thoughts in the comments. If you like such deep and original stories from the Caribbean, subscribe to our channel Caribbean People Info. We don't just tell history, we make it feel. Until the next video, please. God bless.